All right, let's call to order the public hearing of objections to bylaw number 23-03, being the building bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. Here we are, Monday, June 5th, 2023, 6:30 p.m. at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. This meeting is in person for those that wanted to attend, also going to be through Zoom and streaming on Town of St. Andrews Facebook page. If anyone has any objections, probably hard to get them in if you ever had send them, but we will still read them. You can do so by sending it to pnopper@townofstandrews.ca, or really any way that you traditionally communicate with the town, even through their generic message. We'll be sure to get it. If we get into the agenda, you note that all members of council are in attendance, with the exception of Councillor Gumashell and Councillor Bennett. Both have let me know that they would not be here. And we do want to recognize that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotumwagati people. Approval of agenda, only one item on this one. We will go to a regular meeting after this, but it is just a regular one item. Could I have a mover to approve the agenda as circulated? I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji and seconded by Councillor Harlan. Any changes to this? Can't see it, but I still will ask. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Any conflict of interest? There is no presentation. So we are, for the purpose of this meeting, getting into the hearing of objections. Once again, this is bylaw number 23-03, being the building bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, PED 230509. The Council of the Town of St. Andrews is hosting a public hearing of objections to hear objections or comments to bylaw number 23-03, being the building bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. So, did I get that right on the PID? Yeah, okay. All right, so did anybody send in any communications to date, Mr. Nopper?
Your Worship, we received no communications to date.
Is anybody online wishing to speak?
We have no attendees online, Your Worship.
Okay. Would anybody in the audience like to speak, either in objection or support of this? Seeing none. All right. So, at this point, I will say that we have closed the hearing of objections. There will be no question period since no one wished to speak on anything. So, at 6:35 p.m., I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn the first meeting. I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That one's closed. Thank you. All right, let's call to order the regular council meeting here Monday, June 5th. 2023, we are at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex chambers, where people can attend in person, but in addition, we are streaming through Zoom and also through Facebook. If anyone has any questions, anything pertaining to tonight's agenda, you can email them to pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. Mr. Nopper will make sure on the Facebook feed to put his email address in it. Again, the recording of attendance, Councillor Gumashell and Councillor Bennett are not here, but they did let us know that they wouldn't be attending. So thank you to all other members of council for being here. And I do want to recognize again that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotumwagati people. The agenda, I will look for a mover in a second. I do have a couple of we'll call them amendments. But first, let's get it on the table. Could I have a mover for the agenda? I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Harlan. Just beat you by a hair there. All right, discussion on it. I wanted to add 3 changes, and I apologize for that. Normally, as you know, the agenda comes out on Wednesdays, and myself, I sit down with town staff to set it, but we weren't able to do that this past week. So just a couple things. Under presentations, I'd like to give Dominic Berlanger an opportunity to speak to 126 Reed Avenue. You can see he's in the audience. And then under communications, I wanted to add just a piece under achievement by our clerk, Paul Nopper. And then as well under recreation and community service, I wanted to have a quick discussion on the weekly Saturday night music in Market Square. So could I have a mover for those amendments? I've got Councillor Harlan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any other amendments or any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the amendments, please signify by saying aye. Perfect. That has been carried. And then we do have to approve the agenda now. We did have a mover and a seconder, so all I need is, I guess, the vote. So all in favor of the approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's nobody. The agenda has been approved. All right. Before we get into the, I guess, all the details, just want to give an opportunity for the disclosure of conflict of interest. Any this evening? Okay, so we will jump right into presentations then. As mentioned, Dominic Berlanger is here in regards to 126 Reed Avenue. If you want to have the mic, sir, and update us on that, you will see that there is some motions coming up pertaining to that as well.
I'll put my glasses on. Good evening, Your Worship and council members. I'm basically jumping ahead because I think Xander has the presentation for the Reed Avenue project, or at least there's a report circulating. So I basically wanted to add a couple of elements and my thoughts on this project and why we're doing this. But let me start by going off topic just for 2 minutes and say thank you. And I probably not do this on behalf of myself, but all business owners in St. Andrews, to the group of first responders who helped and continue to deal directly with the fallout and the aftermath of the fire of last week. For us as immigrants, this was the first time being confronted with this. We always hear that in other countries, and then when it happens that close, it's remarkable on how communities can come together at moments like this, and how these people, the heroes we call them, bring light into our darker moments. Thank you again for that. My wife and I are proud being part of this community, and for the past 5 years we have witnessed and lived the challenges of a growing small town. Because, in my opinion, that is exactly what we are. We are growing. A growing town filled with established and new businesses. I think if you walked Water Street for the past couple of weeks, you've seen that many businesses have opened and filled up empty spaces. And we can be proud of that. And personally, I feel very proud. Workers, immigrants, students staying for a year or longer, they all look for a place to live. Maybe build a home, ready to establish a family and build a better community where we all can live together. We, and I'm talking about my wife and I, witnessed firsthand at the Kennedy how linked the search for accommodations and workers is also a challenge. Challenge in providing for the housing, while at the same time also answering to a need for short-term rentals. We are with our business at the Kennedy in short-term rentals, but at the same time we have a lot of students and workers, summer workers who apply, called us, asked for a room, whether that is for 2 months, 3 months, sometimes even for a couple of weeks. As we speak today, we have somebody who is joining us, staying with us for 3 months. She's going to work at the aquarium. But that's 3 months also a choice making in not renting that room out for the night, which could also, bring in a revenue. But at the same time, we can employ this person. So it was also a balance on, okay, are we hiring her while at the same time housing her? Because if we don't house her, she doesn't have a job here either. It's a thin line, and sometimes it also involves disappointments. We had to say no or refuse students from the NBCC for this summer, just simply because we lack the housing, and we do need to keep rooms available for our hotel guests. We also witnessed firsthand how difficult and challenging building a new construction can be in downtown St. Andrews, especially then the Water Street area. There's historical aspects, parking issues, height restrictions, sometimes also emotional objections. And we've been confronted with several of these limitations over the past years. Some were founded, others, let's say, were less understandable. We think that the project on Reed Avenue should be able to circumvent most, if not all, these challenges. Let me give you 6 points where we believe that it may answer or at least solve a lot of things. The building will be restored, and we already started working on it, and we're going to respect the footprint. We're not going to add anything to it. We're not going to make it higher. We're not going to add any rooms to it. It's going to be respected within the current footprint. Now, that being said, there are some other buildings that will probably need to be demolished one of them being the little house in the front, which unfortunately is beyond salvation. But that, I think, will also explain Xander is also part of the rezoning process, that with a multi-residential unit, we can only, or not have, I think, more than one.
It's very unclear in the current zoning bylaw what is allowed in a single-family residence, what that is. So the rezoning as well as some amendments will really clarify that use as what I'm calling a rooming house, for people who are living together, but sharing common spaces, kitchens, bathrooms, things like that.
Right. But clearly, we need to demolish, unfortunately, that building. It is beyond salvation. The larger building, and that is basically what's at stake, the larger building will be respected in its current form and shape, will be restored. We started with that on the exterior with the painting, and it's going to be completely remodeled. The parcel itself allows for multiple on-site parking. It's large enough, leaving plenty of room and access for green space, a well-maintained lawn, and plenty of area enjoyable for all residents and visitors, while at the same time also maintaining the current, or at least the look and feel that building had, when it was still in a, let's say, very good shape. We want to bring that back. We're not going to add anything in front of the house. We're going to keep that lawn. We're going to clear some bushes, maybe a tree that is dead. But in general, we are going to respect everything that was there. It is walkable. It is walkable to everything that St. Andrews has to offer. And we offer a lot, or at least this town offers a lot for students, for workers alike. It is accessible. It is also directly connected to Route 127, and it is walkable to the St. Andrews College. So for both groups, this can work. It is a large parcel, as said, allowing for plenty of privacy and comfort, while we can increase the density. Number 5, not unimportant, we look for modern living. I invite you to come and check some of our buildings and things we've accomplished over the years. We look at a modern building with upgraded kitchens, a double kitchen actually, multiple bathrooms which will be shared, but also the concept of having interconnected rooms, allowing for example, families to rent 2 rooms interconnected and have a separate or a secondary bedroom. The whole building, also important, the whole building will be brought up to fire code. We're already in contact with the fire marshal's office. They already inspected the building, so we're going to work closely together in making sure that whatever we get approved, that is also up to code. And last but not least, we want to create a safe and monitored environment. At least one of my own staff will live there on site, allowing for the place to be monitored. We don't want to create some kind of a party house / area where everybody is going to congregate. No, it needs to be a place where people live together, enjoy the green space, and enjoy also the fact of living together in a larger building. So thank you very much for your attention. We will follow the process, but hopefully we can create a multi-residence, or at least a rooming house that allows for workers. Not only my own. There's plenty of other businesses that are looking for accommodations for their own staff and students. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you just want to stay at the podium since you're here. We might as well see if there's any questions. Does any member of council, personally, my two before I saw the plan was, how do you control kind of any noise concerns or anything like that? You've answered that, obviously, with having an employee live there to obviously act essentially like a Don or a proctor of like you'd have like a residence. And the other question I had was parking, and you've you've clearly answered that, and although that building has to be demolished, it does give you opportunity to have a bigger driveway to get in, so there is benefits to that as well. I think Deputy Mayor had a question, did you?
Yes, I did. How many rooms will you have there?
Well,
Approximately,
I
it doesn't
think
have to be
we
exact.
look at 2 kitchens, 5 bathrooms, and then 8 to 9 rooms.
Okay.
And they can be, like I said, we're going to try at least in one part of the building to have rooms that can be connected or interconnected.
Anything else, Deputy Mayor? Is that the one
No,
question?
that's good, thank you.
Every room has its own surface, obviously, which is linked to what the vet's practice or that house was. So some of them are larger or smaller, but in essence, on the ground floor, we're also going to try to have some type of a recreation area because I think there's 2 patios currently and 3 entrances. And so in between, we may have a recreation area where people, can watch television or, meet. But like I said, all within the good understanding that it is a living area and not a, party house or bar.
Thank you.
Councillor Heenan?
Well, first off, thank you for answering all the questions. I appreciate that. And secondly, I'm not sure if anybody else notices, but every time I drive by, I'm totally impressed with the week's worth of work, making it look like it's brought back to life and showing some spectacular results. And it's really what that building needed. You always kind of were sad when you drove by. Now it looks like it's got a little life to it, and I like the color, and I thank you very much for what you've done so far. Thank you.
It is good to see the investment in the building because it was, you can start to see it. And the other thing I'll note is, council, is it's not the only one of its kind in that area because the old Algonquin Pro Shop is actually a unit for housing as well. So there is another one almost directly across the street from it, just in relation to it not being alone in a residential area. Any other questions? Councillor Hurdle.
Yeah, thank you. And I completely trust that you're going to run a fantastic unit there. But my concern, I guess, is more long term. And this probably isn't a question for you to answer. At some point, the building will change hands. Hopefully not for a very long time. But are there any protections in place from an occupancy, fire, noise perspective down the road that we should be concerned about?
Since Mr. Gopin's in person, not on Zoom, I will
can definitely speak to that. And it's a great question. And I think the town already has a lot of tools through your bylaws. You have a noise complaint bylaw. We set the bedroom limit at the point we talked to our building inspectors, and anything over 6 bedrooms requires a fire marshal review and certain elevated standards. So that would kick in. And then there's also provincial occupancy standards. It's a regulation under one of the acts. I'm not totally sure, but it's very, very extensive, and it's not something most municipalities have to use, but it is there as a tool, and it's incredibly extensive. It goes far beyond dangerous and unsightly properties, but then there is that as well. So I think the town has a lot of tools already. And when you think about, the types of things that can happen in just a regular single family residence, you can have normal kind of fighting and noise, and I think the town's bylaws are there to deal with all that as well.
Perfect. Any other member of council? All right. Well, thank you very much. It is on the agenda later this evening, but appreciate the extra information. Okay, so we do have some minutes to approve. So I guess I'll do what I always do since there's multiple minutes. Is there any minutes that anyone want to flag in advance? Otherwise, I'll fly through them quickly. Okay, I'm seeing none. Let's get into them. So the first minutes to approve are the 23:05:01 regular council meeting on Monday, May 1st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Could I have a mover for those minutes? I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those have been carried. The next one are the minutes of the 23:05:15 public hearing of objections to bylaw 23-02, dangerous or unsightly premises on Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Once again, I'll be looking for a mover. Got Councillor Harland and Councillor Neal. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Now we're on to the minutes of the 23:05:15 public hearing of objections to Amendment MP 20-07 to the Municipal Plan MP 20-01 on Monday, May 15th, 2023, 6:45 p.m. Once again, looking for a mover. Got Councillor Neal and Councillor Heenan. All in favor of approving those minutes, signify by saying aye. It's everybody. In the last set of the minutes of the 23:05:15 regular council meeting on Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 7 p.m. I got Deputy Mayor Akaji and Councillor Blanchard, I think. I know, that stung you. All in favor of approving the last set of minutes, please signify by saying aye. And that is how you fly through some minutes. Communications. I think we'll just kick it off with the one that's listed first. Would be the discussion on the Stein Lake fire and Bocabec Shamcook. Of course, I'd like to give anyone the opportunity. I do have a few comments. So many of you have been following along. The Stein Lake fire was originally out of control, then it went to contained. Now it is classified as under control. We'll talk a little bit about DNR in a moment, but we all know how scary of a situation that was. It's something in my time in the community. There was another forest fire, but this one felt a little different. The other one was a reason to be concerned, but this one was really big. It was going in multiple directions. And I know the last fire, I'm sure some people had to evacuate, but not to the levels of this past fire. So despite how a family did lose their home, very tragic. Another family obviously lost a shed and the motorcycle. Despite all that, there is a sense of kind of a sigh of relief and some gratitude, because it could have been a lot worse. And we'll talk about that briefly for sure. But I just wanted to kick off and recognize, I think this council's done a pretty good job. I think probably making the investment in the ladder truck speaks to the respect this council has for the St. Andrews Volunteer Fire Department. But I can't speak highly enough of what they do for this community. And you actually get a little emotional when you talk about it. And the dedication of our fire chief, Kevin Terrio, and the leadership that he has of that fire team. You don't get that everywhere, and without their quick response, they called the province on the way to the call. That's how quick they reacted. And I've got Councillor Neal right to my side, Captain Neal when it comes to the fire department. When things were going really bad at first, not only did the chief did an excellent job, but Councillor Neal was feeding critical information to us as we were trying to make decisions. So he deserves to be recognized. But our volunteer fire department, whether it be my last term on council, the fire actually at the Cottage Craft, as we'd call it at the time. But personally, when Kingsbury Garden had it, every so often you get reminded at how incredibly lucky we are to have them. So I can't just express my gratitude enough to them. And then, of course, mutual aid. It's such an important thing when you live in a small community when something goes really bad. But, the list I have from the fire chief, St. Stephen, Oak Bay, I think they still call it the St. George Fire Department right now, but I'm sure. Fundy Bay, Deer Island, Eastern Charlotte, which is Blacks Harbor, Rolling Dam, Lawrence Station, Western Charlotte, Harvey, Musquash, Oromocto, Moores Mills. When stuff first happened, it was the local fire teams that were ready and they were deployed, and they are the reason why so many houses did not burn down. They're probably the reason why the fire didn't jump the highway at times. Like, there was so much that they did that the community is forever indebted for. And the fact that all of these municipalities and even mayors reached out to say, how can we help? It goes a long way. And then the province of New Brunswick, I know, like every level of government, there's times where we're like, hey, we don't like they're doing this. But the Department of Natural Resources, they were incredible. Not to mention, obviously, the planes were, without those planes, I think even in this weather, it'd still probably be roaring. It would have been that significant, but they had over 60 people on the ground at times, and still in the community today, they still have a team of 15 with support. So, the province really came through and gave us the resources we need to contain that. The Red Cross for dispatching. The day that we found out people were evacuated, they had 100 cots at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex that night. That is spectacular. They worked 24/7 in shifts around to make sure people were coming in at 3 in the morning. All times of the day, they're able to register, and that's volunteer driven. So big thank you to the Red Cross. They also have a list of people that have evacuated as a private list, but we're hoping to actually access that to reach out, and we'll talk about that momentarily. And then, of course, the residents, their patients. If you lived in Shamcook, Boquebec, and you had to leave your home, you had no idea what your property's like, and just to wait around for 3 days to find out, how bad is it on my property? Their patience was incredible. We tried to give them as much information as we could, but the truth is when it gets to individual information, it just wasn't there. So they were so patient. And then, of course, to talk about our residents, the businesses in the region, not just St. Andrews. There's too many people to get into specifics, as we know, but the generosity that this community showed, once again, it demonstrated that we do take care of our own. We're a special place to live. And when you have to actually tell people to stop dropping stuff off at the fire department, at the emergency center, I had actually a list of people that said, next thing you need to buy, reach out to me, I want to buy it. Like, there was a wait list. Like, that doesn't happen everywhere. The fact that you had so many people leave their home and we had those cots, no one had to stay at them because so many people opened up their doors. Everyone's seen the pictures of the list of hotels, motels, and inns that were either free or pay what you can. That's actually, to make about myself for a minute, that's exactly why I moved home and I want to raise my kids in this community. So when times are the tough, that's when we all pull through. And even Vincent Massey Elementary School making those signs. I had a firefighter from DNR said that I think it was about the fourth day, they were getting a little tired and they were driving by and they saw those signs and it picked them up and it made them feel special. And I will say the firefighters had the opportunity the night before last to shake all of their hands and say thank you and say a few words to them. But they did express that they've never been in a community that was as kind and showed as much gratitude as this one. And that goes a long way. Multiple times they don't even know where they came from. There was just stacks of gift cards to Tim Hortons that they could hand around. They would be in the lineup several times at Tim Hortons and someone would just take care of their order for them. And I think, Annette, you were one of them because you took care of mine, maybe. Was that you? Anyway, I've been meaning to ask you about that. But sorry, Councillor Harlan. But you get my point is despite how bad it was, it also really showed how good we are too. And I also want to recognize Chris and Paul. They were in the thick of it, and we had an argument the first night who was going to stay overnight, and I think we all said we were going to because no one would give in. But just the advice and guidance, we're really lucky to have dedicated municipal staff, so thank you to everybody. I did want to open it up to, and Chris, I will pass to you momentarily to talk about support for evacuees, but I wanted to open up in case anyone from council, I'm probably forgetting somebody, but I just wanted to very quickly acknowledge the whole community, the media, believe it or not, CHCO, but when you have messaging that needs to get out of there to tell people that, this isn't over, that to be alert, all those messages, the media was such a critical element in getting the news out there. So is there anybody else that wanted to speak? I don't know, Councillor Neal, to put you on the spot. Is there anything you want to say just about being on the front line or anything like that? I'll put you on the spot. Should have probably told you before the meeting.
That's all right, Your Worship. No, I would just reiterate some of the things you had mentioned. Again, obviously with the mutual aid that we have with our surrounding departments is phenomenal. It's always been there. It's kind of what we do. But honestly, what really stuck out with me again was the support from the community, from the residents, the businesses. It was just phenomenal. I mean, we didn't go without anything. Like you said, there was more food and offerings that we knew what to do with. So it really was kind of heartwarming when you come back from a day in the woods and had something warm to eat and people just constantly offering their support, whether it was trailers for animals or I had numerous people just call and ask if they could volunteer. So it really was special to see.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. It is pretty incredible. I'm sure like when Oromocto came down, there was times where these firefighters have never worked together, but the brotherhood and sisterhood, it's pretty special to see the way that everybody naturally just works together and the way that you do it. Anyone else have anything? I've got a few. I'll work this way. Councillor Heenan.
Well, I'll keep it short. I just would like to say it makes me proud to be part of such a great community. and to see all of everybody putting in 100% without any effort. They just did it. And it really makes me proud. Like, I even had gotten emails from people in Tracy that offered their farms. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's just, it makes you proud. And as you said, Mr. Mayor, it makes you emotional, and it does. But when you went into the center here, the arena, it just makes you proud. And I'm just very proud to be part of this community, and I just have to say thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Harlan?
I think it was really incredible, the amount of support we had from outlying fire departments. And a story that was shared with me, which I think was incredible, was some friends who were in Boquebec whose house could have been lost, was not. The fire department was vigilant when they realized the house was in danger, and they really saved their home. And on the last day, the fire department in St. Stephen came down to do a check and brought a bottle of coffee-infused maple syrup and a note that said, "I'm sorry we trampled on your flowers." They saved their house, and they were giving them, the fire department was giving them a gift. It was really quite amazing.
Councillor Blanchard?
Yeah, not much more to add to what's already been said, other than to say thank you to the volunteer fire departments. And I totally agree, just to be so proud of the community and how they pulled together. It was incredible. I just got back, I just raised this as well. I just got back from a union convention in Newfoundland. There was lots of discussions about the fires in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And the union that I represent, or I'm a part of, the Union of Health and Environment Workers, actually represents a number of employees here in town at the biological station. And they wanted to make a donation of $1,000 to our volunteer fire department. So I'll just look for some direction from council on how we can distribute that. But that was one, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Just on that note, there is going to be an opportunity, like a community celebration, to kind of recognize our fire department, maybe some of the volunteers. As much as we would like to really identify these people that made donations, you're almost afraid to, because you're going to leave someone out. It's that many. There's some that we'll never know who donated stuff. People just dropped and went. But there will be an opportunity, and I can tell you the community celebration early on is, the indication is that will be towards the local fire departments, not just St. Andrews, but all of them. So there will be definitely an opportunity maybe to join on that, if that makes sense, to consolidate funds. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, absolutely echo everything that everyone has said to this point. Incredibly proud of the community and the outpouring of support, but just wanted to note that, and I know that you don't need to hear this, but you did leave one person off of your list, and that was you. I had people come up to me and say, you really have a good mayor there, and that is absolutely true, and your dedication and leadership should absolutely be noted, so thank you very much.
Thanks, but just on that note, council was constantly reaching out to me to say, what can I do, what can I do, what can I do? So let's be honest, I ran my mouth and typed. Councillor Neal's hauling hose, right? So, or at least telling someone to haul hose. You're captain, right? So, but thank you for that. All right. So I will transition now to Mr. Spear. There is a conversation around financial support for evacuees.
Thank you, Worship. So, Council, we've had a lot of people offering to make donations, but two worthy of note is the New Brunswick Federation of Labour had a conference last week in St. John, and from what I understand, took them an offering and offered over $8,000 to be offered to evacuees. And then recently, an email went out to chamber members that the town was collecting funds on behalf of the evacuees to distribute them. We had a talk internally, and I think our discussion is, once the funds are together, we'll probably get an application out to the evacuees, or for the evacuees, I should say, and that for any expenses they incurred related to hospital stays or hospital stays, to hotel stays, food service, things like that. We may not touch the property stuff at first, just because there should be insurance. We're not sure, but we'll try to get that in and out as the money comes in. We'll get the application out over the next couple or 3 weeks. and let as many people as we do know to come in and to fill it out and supply it to us so we can process it relatively quick and get the hands to those that need it in such an unexpected time. There's a couple other things, Your Worship. I just want to mention 2 or 3 things, too, just as a thank you, if you don't mind.
Oh, by all means.
So I would like to say, following up about the Brotherhood of the Firefighters, that on Sunday night, the Fire Marshal's office put a call to any available departments. And outside of our local region, there's 15 other departments as far as West Bathurst who would have sent people down to fight the fire for us. So we really appreciate it. And I think Councillor Neal could say, but if it was ever happened in another part of the province, I'm sure some of our men and women would head up there to help those communities. I do want to also say thank you to the other CAOs and mayors and stuff that got lots of calls through the night and Sunday and Monday morning offering anything. We were just couldn't think of anything, to be honest. We seem to have things under control, but there's even some of them that would have sent volunteers to help out the Red Cross and stuff if that got busier than we had anticipated and stuff. So thank you to all the communities and all those in southern New Brunswick. That it's good to know St. Andrews was special with everybody pitching in, and then other communities would have helped us in our time of needs. So thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Some more to come on the we still have to really weed out that process and make it for everybody, but
yeah, maybe, Your Worship, for the next meeting, we'll put together our policy. I don't necessarily know if council has to approve it, but it might be good for us to put it forward and let you guys give us any advice, and then we'll proceed after that meeting on the 19th to submit the forms or put the forms out.
Perhaps there's a way the Red Cross can at least communicate because they collected people's information. That might be a good way to communicate as well. All right, thank you. So we will transition. Let me just jump to the back here. Under communication, I received a letter, and it is from the Association of Municipal Administrators of New Brunswick. It says the Association of Municipal Administrators of New Brunswick wishes to advise you that it has awarded Mr. Paul Knopper the Level 2 Professional Certification in Local Government and Administration. Just so everyone's aware, Level 2, that is the Intermediate Professional Certification in Local Government Administration, which actually demonstrates broad skills and knowledge in local governance. There is quite a list of criteria that is needed and prerequisites in order to reach Level 2. So on behalf of the council of the town of St. Andrews, Mr. Knopper, we just wanted to say congratulations and great work in furthering your career.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I appreciate it.
All right. And so you'll notice under staff report, this is the meeting that we normally have a staff report, but we made the decision when I was talking to Chris and Paul Tuesday that we would be fine delaying that for 2 weeks. Basically, in this council package, all you have before you is anything that was urgent or anything that didn't really require a staff report or it wasn't done. We just wanted to get this out to have the hearing of objections. Originally, I was moving to actually postpone it so they didn't have to even get the package out Wednesday, but they still wanted to get it out. So thank you for them for that. So that's why there's nothing there. Under the introduction, consideration, passing of bylaws and motions, nothing under finance and admin. It's very rare, but it's happened a couple times. Public Works, nothing. So we're right into public safety with Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is PS 230405. And the subject is bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting dangerous or unsightly premises, second and third reading. The background reads, with the recent changes from local governance reform, the town of St. Andrews must review each bylaw and make revisions based on the new entity. Provided for the council's consideration is bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting dangerous or unsightly premises. So the bylaw process, we had first reading April 17th, 2023. Public hearing of objections and comments May 15th, 2023. Second reading and third and final reading. So there were no comments from the public hearing of objections. Second and third reading of bylaw 23-02 can now be read by title based on the 14-day posting notification process. So the motion reads, that Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for second reading to bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw respecting dangerous or unsightly premises in the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that one? Got Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of going to second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. So here we go. This is the bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw respecting dangerous or unsightly premises in the Town of St. Andrews. By title, 1 is definitions, 2 is title, 3 is reference to act, 4 is inspection, 5 is offenses and penalties relating to dangerous or unsightly premises, 6 is notice to owner or occupier, 7 is evidence. Pages are sticking together. 8 is appeal, 9 is registering a notice, 10 is offense and penalty for failure to comply with a notice, 11 is power to clean and repair or demolish, 12 is report required before demolition, 13 is emergency, 14 is offense and penalty for obstruction, 15 is recovery of town's cost, filing a certificate, 16 is lien, 17 is debts paid by the Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, 18 is severability, and 19 is appeal of previous bylaw. This was read the second time on the 5th day of June 2023. Next one.
And the second motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for third and final reading to bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw respecting dangerous or unsightly premises in the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move, Your Worship.
Once again, a seconder. I've got Councillor Heenan. Discussion. Don't think we'll have any on the third if we didn't have it on the second. Okay, all in favor of going to the third and final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. So here we go. This is a bylaw number 23-02, a bylaw respecting dangerous and unsightly premises in the Town of St. Andrews. Once again, I'll read it by title. 1 is definitions, 2 is title, 3 is reference to act, 4 is inspections, 5 is offenses and penalties relating to dangerous or unsightly premise, 6 is notice to owner or occupier, 7 is evidence, 8 is appeal, 9 is registering a notice, 10 is, I missed 10, let me go back, 10 is offense and penalty for failure to comply with a notice, 11 is power to clean and repair or demolish, 12 is report required before demolition, 13 is emergency, 14 is offense and penalty for obstruction, 15 is recovery of the town's cost, filing of certificate, 16 is lien, 17 is debts paid by the Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, 18 is severability, and 19 is repeal of previous bylaw. And this was read now the third time on the 5th day of June 2023. All right. So the next one, again, would be Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one is reference number PS 230609, and the subject is fire protection on the wharf. The background reads, with the weight restrictions imposed on the wharf this spring, the fire department is unable to safely get a fire truck to the end of the wharf in the event of an emergency. We have investigated 3 options before you this evening, the first being a hard line installed underneath the wharf at a cost of $73,000. The second is a hard line installed on the wharf at a cost of $62,000. And the third is purchasing an additional 600 feet of hosing to be stored on a trailer for $14,100. With the upcoming wharf refurbishment, the hard line may have to be disassembled and reassembled, adding an additional cost. This is an emergency item, thus unbudgeted. Our recommendation is to purchase the 600 feet of hose. Then the fire chief, operations manager, and public works supervisor can determine the best place for the trailer to be stationed. So the motion reads that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews authorizes the unbudgeted purchase of $14,100 from Nova Fire Equipment for additional hosing to support the wharf in the event of a fire, and I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you. A seconder. Got Councillor Ware. Discussion on this one. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. Just on the topic of fire protection for the wharf, with extended hot and dry conditions that we experience seemingly more and more each summer, as we know, it doesn't take much more than an errant cigarette toss to send wooden structures to a place of that I don't like to think about. My question, I guess, is there fire insurance on the wharf right now?
Yes.
Yes. And does the insurance require, what does the insurance require when it comes to hosing, piping, fire hydrants?
it would require at least that you'd have the ability to fight the fire, and so not having any access to it could be justified to not cover in the event of a fire. So by providing this service, and they have installed it's only a small line, but have put a small hose, well, a long hose, but on a 2-inch line on the wharf. So let's say with that errant cigarette, there's something immediately available there that can at least start to help put it out. But this will be sufficient for the insurance company.
As I recall, I think it was last summer, there was some heroic efforts by someone with a fire extinguisher to put out something similar.
Yeah, and there was, well, it's like you said, I think an errant cigarette was what the determination was. And it's just those wooden piles that are sacrificial piles on the outside are old and dry and just landed the wrong way and caught fire and smoked. And the fire department was fast, but there's people coming over. They remember the fire from the 90s and fire extinguishers and people throwing water on it and got it out fast. But there's still a lot of wood around there, and it wasn't an errant cigarette that caused the problem back in the 90s, so we still have that potential of a serious incident on the wharf that could get out of control really fast. So we're trying to minimize that at all cost.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of council? All right, I'll call the question then. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That has been carried. Thank you, Councillor Neal. Councillor Hurdle, you're off light today as well. Councillor Gumashell isn't here, but I thought that's where we would stick in a discussion on the weekly music in Market Square. I don't know if you wanted to kick that off, Mr. Spear. You want me to? It doesn't make any difference to me, whatever you prefer.
Well, maybe I can start to explain the steps. So
You go for it.
as council remembers, we hired a recreation manager back over the winter. And one of the initiatives was that not only recreation, but to add cultural events. And so Mr. Henselpecker has taken over Canada Day, and it's going well. Look, quite similar to this past year with some added events, just in order to create some more opportunities for people in the community. One of the things we talked about early was a summer concert series in the square. We tried to line it up against, because some other communities have the same thing, and one of the things is not to compete against St. Stephen or St. George, because we're trying to draw people to our community. And so one of the nights that looked open was Saturday night, and we worked in cooperation with one of our local businesses who would also hire them some artists to come in after hours, to split the cost of some of these artists. And so 3 or 4 weeks ago, Mervyn went store to store or business to business around Market Square to let them know what they were thinking. And one of the businesses said they didn't like it, but if they could stop the people or could reduce the amount of time that the parking wasn't allowed, they'd be okay with it. Then there's one business that was against it, and then 2 businesses that were for it. And so they were aware, and then we put out a letter last week announcing the specific dates we were going, and the plan is to put barricades up about 2 o'clock, 2:30 on the Saturday to try to restrict any more traffic coming in. So we're not going to pull people out of there, but we'll probably have signs that say, no parking after 5 o'clock or something. Have a little stage. We're going to set up a stage for the summer in the square, just something small. Most of the acts are 2 to 3 people tops. And then they'll be performing, I think 7 to 9. What's 6 to 8, sorry. 6 to 8. And then they'll be done for the evening and everything opened up. So Mervyn put that letter out. He forwarded it to you folks last week and then hand-delivered it to some of the businesses around. But some of the owners still have concerns about the square being cut off from parking during that time, that they say they need it for their customers or for access for people with disabilities to their business. So I will say that as part of the initiative, the Business Improvement Association St. Andrews donated $5,000 to it to help pay for the artists. So overall, the business community is enthusiastic, but it doesn't affect them directly as far as how it's going to, on the parking issue. Although the hope of staff was that it would bring more people or keep people in town after a night of boating or going to Kingsbury Gardens or whatever and extend their stay and help the restaurants and things and just create more community feel. We looked at various venues. In our way of thinking, Market Square has always been a communal spot for the town. It is used for parking, but that's just because it's not always used for communal our community exercises, our community cultural services. So we put it there, and we would like to continue doing it there, but we do have some, which I've forwarded to you, various opposition to the initiative that we've put out there. So we're just looking for direction from you if we should rethink this or how we should address this any further. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. So council, obviously two sides to this one. If you think about it, one of the questions I heard is, when was this parking lot built? Well, the parking lot wasn't built. It was actually a community gathering spot. They didn't put the cenotaph in the middle of a parking lot, right? That was a place that's always been for the community to gather. You see it in a lot of downtowns. Pretty much every historic downtown has a spot where people can gather. That's what that is. I've heard some language like, we're okay with farmers market and paddle fest. Well, good, you should be, because they were there first, actually, compared to anyone I've actually seen a complaint from. As far as the music, I heard it competes with businesses. Well, not everyone can afford to have a meal and enjoy music downtown. It's not uncommon to have music, to have a vibrant downtown. But with that being said, on the other side of it, we do have extremely limited parking downtown. Although it is later in the day, Saturday is probably the day that we have the most traffic, as is. By shutting it down and kind of in the mid-afternoon, it does remove some spots. And the other thing that I will say is that we do have a number of parks that are underutilized in our community. There's literally nothing that happens in a lot of them. But with that, on the other side of it too, is the BIA is probably the main financer behind the actual musical entertainment. If you move it to one of these parks, the BIA is not going to fund it, because they fund things to improve the downtown. So, council, over to you. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think our manager of recreation kind of got a little bit of a welcome to how some things might seem so simple in this community, and they're a lot tougher. So I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Heenan.
Your Worship, in regards to the disabled parking, I don't feel that's warrant, because right up on the Water Street, there are two easily accessible spots. One by the post, there's four, Deputy Mayor Akadju says. So I don't think that that's really, we have enough disabled spots for that time frame. So that doesn't pose a problem. I'm just wondering if we could say, instead of 2:30 to 2 to 2:30, taking it down, if there was any way of stretching it to like 3 o'clock, like for takedown. Like it really at 3 o'clock, everybody's shifting. Businesses are closing, some of them at 4 and 5, and you also have people going back to the hotel to get ready for dinner, etc. So if it could be shoved back to 3, I would see it as being a sort of a compromise. Anyway, thank you, Your Worship.
Mr. Spear, your thoughts on 3? It makes it a little tighter, obviously, but if you, I guess, have the signs up that clearly communicate it has to be out at 3, it's at the person's parking's responsibility to make sure it's out of there, I guess.
Yeah, and that's, Your Worship, and that's correct, is that we were willing to play with it either direction. We just had to pick a time to start it. And again, we were primarily saying that the place had to be vacated, that we're going to put a barricade across by the entrance to the square at 2:30 with signage in the square saying that all cars had to be gone by probably 5 o'clock in order to give up space and for those people to set up. We might even put up some pylons in order to allow the performers to get going, but that was the plan, and it worked out well. We would have extended it closer to when the actual start time. It was just to play it by ear, so people that brought chairs and stuff would have a place to sit and be able to watch the performance, that's all.
So do you think 4 p.m. would be a stretch even then?
I might be concerned about 4. I'd like to do 3 for a couple of weeks and seeing how it goes, and then punch it
See how
back
it's
to 4.
respected. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Okay, so it sounds like 3 isn't a concern. It's a good suggestion. Councillor Harlan.
How many parking spaces are in the town square?
Depends who's parking, but 10 if it's done right.
And so
Yeah.
I don't remember, I should know this, but there's one that's actually designated disabled?
There used to be 3, but then people said because of the slope, they weren't being used.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if there's any in there anymore.
They're all in water now.
The majority, there are 9 accessible parking spots within a 3-block radius, and 5 of them within King Street and behind Town Hall. Now, the three that were there, I believe there still is at least one sign, but it was commented that it is slippery, it is difficult to maneuver in that area, and that's why a lot of people prefer to park on the upper street and maneuver down the sidewalks as
Okay.
well.
And when, can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So, and when did we start parking in the square? When did we start to allow that?
It's gone on as long as I've been with the town,
Okay.
in and out, but if we ever had events, it always took priority. And I will say, I mean, we're sensitive to it, so over at Canada Day weekend, it's on the weekend this year, and so we have events on Saturday and Sunday, but on Sunday, we're moving them on Sheriff Andrews' house in order to ensure that the square's opened up on that day. So Canada Day, there'll be events in Market Square, but on the day after, on the 2nd, we'll be moving events over behind Town Hall so that the square can be open for the businesses there. So we are sensitive to try to minimize the impact, but we still think it's the ideal spot for power and stuff. It was set up for that as community space with the lighting and things, in our
And
opinion.
My last one is, you say for a summer concert series, but are we looking at like from July 1st until August 30th? Are we looking at 8 Saturday nights?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hurtle.
Thank you very much. Just regards to weather, is this a rain or shine event, or is this just if it's the weather is cooperating?
Well, it's a rain or shine, except the rain will be in our theater. We'll move it up to the W.C. O'Neill Theater.
So it'll move to the
Yeah.
parking lot, and we wouldn't use the parking lot.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, knowing our summers, that may mean we don't have any in the square, right?
Yeah.
So I get my other question is just regarding the artists themselves, and maybe you might not be able to answer this question. This is more of a question for the BIA, but like weather permitting, they're going to get paid regardless. Like they wouldn't lose. They get booked, scheduled, and paid by the BIA, and that's like a contract for them, is it?
Yeah, well, and that's why we'd move it to the theater, because you're absolutely right. The summer is about the only time many of these artists can make their living, because,
Right.
that's when they're the busiest. And so, instead of giving up on the funding on a bad day or trying to build some type of awning, we just thought, that the theater holds 125 people, that we'd bring them up to the theater on a day that was unsuitable, was our thought.
My last question is because there was a community stage that was set up behind Sheriff Andrews' house during Paddlefest. Would that be considered in the BIA zone?
Technically, no. The
No.
BIA is just on Water Street,
Just
but
Water.
I think they'd be okay with it, with that for occasion. But again, it goes back to, I think the space is still down on the front. Water is still kind of the highlight of the area, and there are a couple of although there's a couple of businesses that are opposed to it, there are a couple of businesses that were very enthusiastic about it. So to keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Councillor Ware.
I'll just make a comment on the concept. I think any community that I've been involved in that has done this, it has proved to be a tremendous success. There were a few naysayers at the start, and I've seen it in Bathurst, I've seen it in Fredericton, I've seen it in Halifax, St. Stephen 30 years ago. I think as a concept, it's exactly where we should be going. As far as the administration, whether it's 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, I think these gentlemen, that's what we're paying them for, to do the administration. It's up to us to either approve the concept or not.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Ware. Deputy Mayor Agenji.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Hanselbecker for his initiative, because it is a good idea to have it. And I think down in the town square, or Market Square, which it's always been called Market Square, is it's excellent, to be down there while Paddlefest is there, and a lot of people you've been there, and it's great. And I like to see music outdoors. It's nice to see, and you meet all your friends, and so I think that's a good idea. If they lose parking for a couple of hours, that's sad. But we have been respectful throughout the years. I mean, Canada Day for years has, we've bent over backwards and we've moved the market out so that they could have the area. And now, because it's on a weekend and we're doing July 1st and 2nd, it's great to see there will be, more time to have people socializing downtown and maybe staying another night in St. Andrews, which is great for the economy. So I thank you guys for doing the effort to put it out there, and for his effort, and BIA for taking the initiative. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? Councillor Neal.
Yeah, just a quick question, I guess. So the stage that's going to be set up is going to be set up and taken down each Saturday? Or is it going to be left there?
We think we're going to leave it there, but it's 8 by 16, so it's 2 parking stalls equivalent. We could take them out, we're trying to find a more mobile way of doing it, because it's about an all-day job to set it up.
Right.
And so we'll play that out a little bit. But we talked about adding into the budget a more mobile stage, like on a trailer or something, where it can be drop and go, as opposed to what we currently have, which requires a lot of manpower and volts and things like that to set it up.
Okay. I guess my only other comment, again, I had the same question maybe about the location of it, whether, some of the unutilized parks might have been a better spot to try it out at least. My first thought was, again, Sheriff Andrews' house, where they did have some of the Paddle Fest events. Seems like a great unused space with, there's a fair amount of seating there already, I believe. Is there any opportunity to maybe even try it in a location if it's well attended? Have to move it around? Or, again, I guess I can see both sides of it. I think it's a great initiative. I love seeing the outdoor music downtown. But I guess I am a little sympathetic to some of the businesses who, again, storefront is right there in Market Square, whether it's restaurants or the whale watchers or whatnot. Again, they're there by choice, I guess, but at the same time, I think if we took away the storefront from any business on Water Street every Saturday, they would probably be fairly upset with us to begin with. So I kind of expected that reaction. So I guess I'm just trying to think of how we can best accommodate everybody, which, again, I know is the impossible to make everyone happy. But yeah, my thought with Sheriff Andrews' house was, I don't know if it was worth exploring or if you guys thought about it.
That's why we're seeking council's direction, to be honest. Again, a couple of the businesses with outside patios there, and there's a third one across the street that might be enthusiastic about it, so we're taking both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we're not really taking away the storefront. We're maybe reducing their access a little bit, but I think, a few dozen, maybe even 100 people would be less intrusive in the square than people trying to manipulate through cars and stuff that are moving. So yes, people won't be able to park and walk right to the businesses as closely, but on the flip side, people coming from the street, I think, would have easier access to those businesses than if there were cars all around and moving, in my humble opinion, anyway.
Kind of second round here. This is good. Councillor Blanchard first.
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you, Worship. I think I agree with Mr. Spear. I don't think they're losing access. It might be a slightly reduced or access, but we're talking about for a small window on a Saturday once a week. There's obviously pros and cons to any new initiative, but I think the pros in this case far outweigh the negatives. I think I go back to what Mr. Mayor, Mayor Henderson had said earlier. They didn't put the cenotaph in the middle of a parking lot. So I do think of Market Square as a public area, and I think this is a wonderful initiative and a good opportunity to make use of that during the summer, that space. It's a wonderful space, and I think we should have more public events there. So I'm 100% in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Councillor Hurd.
Yeah, just one final question, just because the question's in the back of my mind, and maybe you can add some clarification. The town doesn't actually own the access to that space either. That access is private and can be taken away from us at any point. Am I wrong in that, thinking that?
Partially, we own half the access to it, is a better way of putting it. So we have one lane of access.
So that's protected, that we will always have that. Okay, thank you.
And part of the expanding Market Square with kind of shoring up the waterfront was to give us a larger access point. But that being said, for the neighboring businesses, if we're going to invest in Market Square and make it bigger, it's probably going to be used for more community events, right? Like we're not building a bigger parking lot. When I heard that plan, we're building it to host more events, right? So, Councillor Heenan.
I also think that even the merchants or the businesses that are opposed could have a spin-off. Because if people come down there, they may not access the business the night they're enjoying the music, but they may come back when they find out that it is there. And that is a spin-off that there's no tracking that, but it could be a possibility. So, and as I say, everyone, St. Stephen's already got their signs up advertising downtown to, their venues. So I think it's a good idea. I support it 100%, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So just a quick show of hands if you support this initiative being in the Market Square. That's majority, so we're good to go. Thanks, Council, for talking that one out in length. Speaking of talking in length, we're switching to planning and economic development. Councillor Heenan, I hope you have your glasses adjusted. You have some reading to do.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Well, the first one is PED 230417, Amendment to MP 20-07 to the Municipal Plan MP 20-01. Mr. Henry Hansen, PID 013-25505, second and third reading. The background is the Town of St. Andrews has received a request for an amendment to the Municipal Plan MP 20-01 from Mr. Henry Hansen to allow for a one-lot subdivision on PID number 013-25505 Rose Lane. The next steps. Public presentation was done on Monday, April 17th, 2023. First reading was April 17th, 2023. Public hearings of objection was May 15th, 2023. Obtain the views of the Planning Advisory Committee, May 17th, 2023. Second reading, third reading. Please see the attached document for a copy of the PAC's comments. There were no objections or comments at the public hearing of objection. Council can now move to second and third reading. One of the actions is that Council of St. Andrews grants leave for the second reading of Amendment MP 20-07 to the Town of St. Andrews Municipal Plan MP 20-01 for Mr. Henry Hansen, PID 013-25505, Rose Lane, to remove the portion of the residential growth area designation as shown on the generalized future land use map from PID 013-25505. And I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, seconder. Got Councillor Blanchard winning that one. Discussion? All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
I'm off to second reading, and this is bylaw number MP 20-07, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-01, being a municipal plan bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews. Being enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews as follows. Number one, that the bylaw number MP 20-01, the municipal plan bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews, is amended by removing the portion of the residential growth area designation as shown on the generalized future land use map attached to the said bylaw Schedule A thereof for the land shown on Schedule 1 attached here too. This has been read the second time, the 5th day of June 2023. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Next motion, that the Council of St. Andrews grants leave for the third and final reading of Amendment MP 20-07 to the Town of St. Andrews Municipal Plan, MP 20-01 for Henry Hansen, PID 013-25505, Rose Lane, to remove the portion of the residential growth area designation as shown on the generalized future land use map from PID 013-25505. I so move.
Thank you, seconder, Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion? All in favor of going to third reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
Here we go. Bylaw number MP 20-07, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-01, being a municipal plan bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews, be enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews as follows. Number one, that bylaw number MP 20-01, the municipal plan bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews, is amended by removing the portion of the residential growth area designation as shown on the generalized future land use map attached to the said bylaw Schedule A thereof for the lands shown on Schedule 1 attached here too. Read the third time on the 5th day of June 2023. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The next reference number is PED 230615. Amendment Z22-04 to the zoning bylaw Z2201 for PID 013-25240, Evans Land Development Limited. The town of St. Andrews has received an application request for rezoning from the SR, Service Residential Zone, to MR2, High Density Multiple Residential Zone, to facilitate the development of an apartment complex / subdivision. Please see the attached staff report from Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission for details. The steps in the process are public hearing of objections, obtain views of the PAC, first reading, second reading, third and final reading. The action is the motion that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews sets the date of Tuesday, July the 4th at 2023 at 6:30 p.m. through a public hearing of objections as per Section 111 of the Community Planning Act on amendment of Z22-04 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 013-25240 Evans Land Development Limited, rezoning from the SR Service Residential Zone to MR2 High Density Multiple Residential Zone to facilitate the development of an apartment complex / subdivision. I move this, Your Worship.
Seconder. Got Deputy Mayor Akergy again. Any discussion on this one? Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. This question is for Mr. Gopin. Perhaps you can explain to me a little bit, because in my experience, these don't necessarily, from the look of them anyway, which shows my lack of understanding, look like high-density builds, more medium density in my mind, but high density for the area for sure. So I'm just curious around the zoning requirement itself. A high density, is that actually required for these builds? And can you explain just a little bit more about that?
Sure. So it's really just semantics. It's really just the name of the zone. And I think it's to distinguish it from MR1, which is called the multiple residential zone. And then I think MR2 came after the fact later when the Anchor's Landing development was happening. And so to distinguish those two developments, that was called a high density residential zone. I believe the developer wants to do a subdivision. So there's no requirement of a certain level of density as long as the use is an apartment building or things that are higher density than a single family dwelling. And this certainly meets that, and it meets the other zone standards with maybe one or two little small dimensional variances that may be required.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Blanchard.
Just on the land for public purposes, the 8%, which is what's required. I know we have done in the past the cash in lieu of that, but I think this council has discussed before a need for more green spaces and to try and get away from that cash in lieu. Is there space? I know there's a small section there shown in the diagram that we have there, but is there space to do that?
I think there would be. I mean, there's some amenity space for residents that's required that would not be necessarily land for public purposes. But I think the developer, they weren't able to come on such short notice tonight, but I think it's something they did want to discuss with council, and I believe they will be here on June 19th to talk about that and other matters. So I think my guess is they could fit it on the site. They might not feel like it's the most desirable use of the land for what they want to do. But, certainly if they change the number of units, the parking as it's laid out now would be the maximum build out. So if they lowered that just a little bit, then they would have more space for other things. So I think it's totally possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor of setting this for the public hearing of objections, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
That has been set. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Next motion, that the Council of St. Andrews requests the views of the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews as per Section 110 of the Community Planning Act on Amendment Z22-04 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 013-25240 Evans Land Development Limited, rezoning from the SR Service Residential Zone to MR2 High Density Multiple Residential Zone to facilitate the development of an apartment complex / subdivision. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Harlan won that one. Discussion? Okay, all in favor of sending this over to the PAC, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
Any opposed? That's everybody, so that has been carried. Next motion.
Okay, our next reference number is PED 230616, Amendment Z22-05 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 013-23591 for Dominique Belanger and Micaiah Elisa Van de Kel. Is that close? How about Mr. and Mrs.? The Town of St. Andrews has received a rezoning application and several text amendments to the SR Serviced Residential Zone to MR1 Multiple Residential Zone to facilitate the development of a rooming house primarily for students. Please see attached staff report from the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission for details. Steps: public hearing of objections, obtain views of the PAC, first reading, second reading, third, and final reading. And one of the action is the motion that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews sets the date of Tuesday, July the 4th, 2023 at 6:45 p.m. through a public hearing of objections as per Section 111 of the Community Planning Act on Amendment Z22-05 to the zoning bylaw for PID 013-23591 for Mr. and Mrs. Belanger for text amendment and rezoning from the SR Serviced Residential Zone to MR1 Multiple Residential Zone to facilitate the development of a rooming house primarily for students. I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Akchi was quick again. We did hear from the applicant earlier. Is there any question or any comments at this point? Okay, all in
Your Worship.
Yep.
Sorry, it's something I didn't notice until now, but back to the planner, was the phrase primarily for students problematic if, they might have young adults that aren't going anywhere, that still meets the criteria, but it just seems like I wonder it should be part of the motion?
I mean, it's in my report as kind of just, was my understanding at the time. It's not part of the bylaw or any of the amendments. There's no references to students specifically.
Can we drop that as a friendly amendment? It doesn't really matter. It's for the setting. It's really when we go to the readings that matter, right?
Doesn't affect anything.
Okay, doesn't affect anything. Okay, so we got a mover, seconder. Call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
That's been carried. The next one.
Thank you, Worship and Council. That the Council of the Town of St. Andrews requests the views of the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews as per Section 110 of the Community Planning Act on Amendment Z22-05 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 013-23591 for Mr. and Mrs. Belanger for the text amendment and rezoning from the SR Serviced Residential Zone to the MR1 Multiple Residential Zone to facilitate the development of a rooming house primarily for students. I so move it, Your Worship.
Seconder. Got Councillor Neal, that one. Discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That has been carried. We are through the motions this evening. There is nothing under new business, which brings us into question period. Mr. Spear?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I just want to follow up, just to let council know of something that kind of we've gone through a lot of development motions here that kind of affect the same area of town, as well as some new stuff. I will say one of the items that keeps coming up is about doing a traffic study, and I get a quote today on doing a traffic study that's actually reasonable, may go under my own budget, but if it doesn't, I'll certainly bring it up on the 19th. So for any residents that are concerned about that element of it, the mayor and council has heard you, and we're addressing that by hiring a firm to do a study to give us some advice on whether or not, with the proposed development over the next several years, if the current infrastructure can handle that as far as road.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually do think that there's a number of developments in this area that if we have the resources, we should do it. It just, for people that are in the area that have concerns, it certainly would address a lot of them when it comes to traffic flow, for sure. Does anyone oppose that? I know you don't have the quote before us, but if you say it can work within your budget, then I think that that's something we should definitely do, as that is a lot of development in one area.
Just a quick question. When we do a traffic study, do we have to give, I guess, a mission statement or a purpose before they start, or can they come up with their own?
I'll forward the proposal to council, and if you want to give me feedback that you want to discuss it even further, we can.
That's a very safe answer. All right. Yes, thank you for adding that in, Mr. Spear. So question period. I guess we'll start by seeing if anyone's online. Well, you can ask. No one's online. Perfect. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask any questions this evening on anything pertaining to the budget or to the agenda? I am working on budgets at Kingsbray, in case anyone's wondering. Okay, seeing none. So we are into Councillor and Deputy Mayor's comments. Any member of Council or Deputy Mayor have anything they'd like to say? Councillor Harlan.
Thank you. So this past week we've seen, as we've talked about already tonight, a tremendous connectedness within our community. We live in a very special community that has shown shown significant support to our residents in Shamcook and Bocabec and to our first responders, and that's fantastic. June is also Pride Month, and my hope is that as a community we will also take this time to reflect on how we can become an even more inclusive, safe community for all members of our community. So I would just encourage everybody to think about June, what June represents, and our Pride Month. And I know Councillor Heenan has an announcement as well regarding Pride.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harlan. And we'll switch to Councillor Heenan on that note.
In following suit, Ms. Vicky has asked me to announce that the Charlotte County Pride Walk will be June the 17th at 11 a.m. We're hoping that everyone will attend as possible to the walk, and it's meeting outside here at the W. O'Neill Arena. And that is correct. And just an FYI, the boat cruise is canceled for Friday evening, so if you happen to have tickets, I believe you can get your money refunded at the point of sale. Anyway, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Akji.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I guess the first thing I want to say is that NBCC graduation will be June 9th, which is this Friday. So I hope that as many people will go to the graduation. I forgot to write down the time because I'm going to be there on the land recognition and also on behalf of council I've represented. And then National Indigenous Day is June 21st. And in Market Square, the Beskotomakati people are hosting activities from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it's a Wednesday, but it'll be all day in Market Square. And there will be food, activities, drumming, whatever they will provide. So if you want more information about it, I would suggest you call the tribal office with the chief. But it will be from 9 to 12, and everybody's welcome. It was a good one last year, and I hope it'll be just as well attended this year. The third thing is the drum workshop, which I keep trying to have, because I have so many people calling me. We've decided to host it on Sunday, July the 2nd, as part of Canada Day activities. I have 2 elders coming. Actually, I have 3. I have an elder, my friend that's Constance Sewell. She's coming from Pabineau First Nations. And Greg, what's his last name? I forgot it. It's gone. And anyway, he is coming with his wife, and they're going to be doing the workshop on Sunday. Now, I've called everybody. I've left messages, and we had the funding from the government, but we lost that when the budget went in March or whatever. Although I tried to have another workshop in February. So we've decided to do it Sunday, July the 2nd. It's going to cost $60 per person. And as I say, I've got may have spaces because I'm waiting for people to call me back. You have until, I've decided June the 16th, which is Friday, 2 weeks from today, to send me the money if you want it, to have a spot in the workshop. For those people I've left messages, I wish you would call me back and tell me whether or not you're going to take that spot, because after the 16th, I'm going to open it up to the long list of people that I have, but I also have another list that's starting from people who are calling me again to say if you do have some cancellations, they would like to do it. So my number to be called at and leave a message is 506-529-3331. And the other thing that we will be doing along with Canada Day celebrations is that at 4 o'clock on the 2nd of July, we will be doing ceremony and a blessing of all the drums. So I'm asking the people that did the workshop in November to bring their drums, and that we'll have them all blessed on that day. And the class will be from 9 to 12, and then there'll be 1 to 4. And at 4 p.m., there will be a blessing for all the drums that were made that day and in November. And then I'd like to see you bring them September 30th to our Truth and Reconciliation Day, because it would be nice to have those 75 drums walking around the point and making noise, even though we'll disturb the mayor. I didn't give you my email if you want to transfer me the money, but please first register, and then I can tell you whether or not you're on the list. So if I've left you a message, call me back. Email me an e-transfer, which is my last name, A-K-A-G-I, Kate, K-A-T-E, that's all one word, at gmail.com. And again, that's before June the 16th. So that's that. One thing that the mayor asked me to attend was the 16th annual ceremonial review of the cadets, our cadets, on Wednesday, May 17th. And I did that, and a few counselors were there as well, as our CAO was there. And I thank you all for participating, because we need to support our young cadets. There's quite a few of them. They performed spectacularly. They marched well. I got to speak to a lot of them and their parents. I found out my great niece is a cadet, which threw me for a loop because I didn't know, but her grandfather would be very pleased because he was in at Gagetown, so he was in the armed forces, so it's kind of nice to see that the grandchildren are going on. There was a reviewing officer, Major S. Laporte, and he spoke very well and very highly of the area. But I'd like to thank their commanding officer, Aaron Bennett, and the people that worked with him. They did a fantastic job that evening. It went very, very well. And again, I was just impressed. So I thank them very much for the invite. And I thank you for allowing me to represent you and council. And so it was a good evening. And I would like to reiterate thanks to everybody who helped out with this fire. It was fantastic. I came up a couple of times and was sent home because there were so many volunteers, but I did bring food, drop it off. But it was wonderful to see, and our fire department is number one. So I thank you guys very much. I mean, I know the fire near the point, you guys saved my house, so I'm very thankful for what you do, and it's mostly volunteer. So again, and thank you guys and the staff, because you do so much for our community as well, and CHCO-TV for covering. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? Councillor Ware.
The Kelly Cove Smolt Facility has put in their environmental protection plan for Phase 2. You may recollect at the end of March they had Phase 1. Phase 1 was the removal of the greenery, the trees. Phase 2 is everything else. So it's a fairly large phase. Members of the committee have until June 12th to get their comments in. It's a lot of paper to go through, but I think we're going to make it through it. And I will be meeting with the people on the west side of Shamcook Lake between now and the 12th. They are extremely concerned about it and want to know what the drawdown is on all the wells and that type of thing. There's one main well that does the drawdown of water with 3 fallback wells. Then there's a 4th well. I know where it is because I 4-wheel by it all the time, but that's the observation well where they will monitor the water, the groundwater level, or the aquifer. So I haven't told the 12th of June to get it in. If anybody has any concerns, questions, whatever, I will attempt to answer them. But as you can appreciate, there's 4 or 5 consulting firms involved. It's quite a volume of paper. So,
Thank you very much, Councillor Ware. Okay, Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I want to thank the Legion for the banners that will be put up in November. We've been a community that hasn't had these banners, and I'd like to thank staff for working towards getting the rest of the banners, and that the deadline was the end of May, and I unofficially have heard that they have sold a lot of the banners. So it's been a great thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in November. I'd like to thank especially Sue Coombs and Inez Thomas Cooley for their work in organizing this. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry I was a little slow with it.
It's okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Council. So myself, I spoke earlier, so I'll spare you again. But at 8:14 p.m., I'll move that council goes into, or I'll look for a mover that council goes into closed session as per Local Governance Act, Section 68(1)(c). Information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person or the local government, or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract. Mover, please. Okay, Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of going to closed session? We are going to closed session. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening.